Hello everybody, Kelly Rice here, but I write under my pen name, K.M. Rice, and welcome to my author vlog. You are, ironically enough, watching it while I am not in my room in California. Well, I am, but while you're watching this, I'm not. I'm actually in Ireland, visiting the beautiful, beautiful country. So if you go to my social media, that's what you'll be seeing is pictures of where I am and what I'm doing. But with the magic that is modern technology, I can film this ahead of time and schedule it to upload while I'm gone so that you still have content like this while I'm away. Today I'm going to be answering 2 questions. One was sent in to me via email, and the other was a comment left on one of my videos, and one requires a very short answer, so I thought I'd answer that one first. The second is longer. So the first question is from Emilio Calderon. And Emilio says, have you ever imagined having any of your books in other languages? Thank you, Emilio. And thank you for your kind words in your email. I hope you're watching. Yes, the short answer is yes. I have dreamed of having my books translated. In fact, I even had someone who's a French speaker translate Darkling for me, just out of the goodwill of his heart. Thank you, Ari. You know who you are. But unfortunately it couldn't be printed because with many languages, there's a difference between like the spoken and the formal versions of the language. So as much as I would love to have my books available in as many languages as possible to reach as wide of an audience as possible, I just don't have the money to hire a translator for every different language and for every different book. So unfortunately, that's my answer to your question is yes, it's something I would love to do. It's not something that I'm doing by, I'm not trying to exclude people who don't speak English. It's just out of my financial means at the moment. And I do speak some Spanish. I used to be quite fluent, pero hace demasiado tiempo que he hablado, entonces estoy perdiendo la lengua. I'm not even sure if that's right, but it's been so long since I've spoken it, I'm losing the language. It's still there somewhere. I've noticed that if I've had a little to drink, it seems to come out easier, go figure. But when you're not using it, you lose it. So I don't feel confident enough in my Spanish at all to be like, well, I'm just going to translate Darkling into Spanish. There's still a lot about Spanish, I'm sure, that I do not know, because I studied it for 4 years, but you can only learn so much for 4 years, and I've never lived in a Spanish-speaking country, so immersion counts for quite a lot. My boyfriend's trying to teach me Irish. It's slow going, but the attempt is there, and that's a difficult language to learn. But I do love challenges, and I do love trying to learn new languages, so there's that. So that answers your question, Emilio. And then the longer question that I wanted to take a stab at was left by Erica Reyes. And Erica says, I'm an aspiring writer, but see myself as more of a storyteller. My major is business, not English, but see writing as a hobby and another passion of mine / creative outlet. I struggle with getting my words down on paper. So far, I can outline the story / scenes on paper, but when it comes to dialogue and scenery, I get stuck / not sure what I'm doing / not doing it right. I know I can find videos on YouTube for this and have looked, but they seem choppy and not thorough enough. I was wondering if this is something that you can teach or enlighten us on. I would love to see your take on these topics and suspect other viewers would too. By the way, thanks for all your videos and advice on YouTube. Oh, you're welcome, Erica. I will take a stab at it. With all things with writing, I'm sharing my experience. And my experience is going to be different from your experience, and it's going to be different from many other writers' experiences, because we're all different human beings, and we live and move through the world in different ways, and in our own unique ways that only we can. So always bear that in mind with all of my advice, and I hesitate to even really call it advice. It's just kind of me sharing what I've learned, and what my thoughts are, and you can take it or you can leave it, or you could take what works and leave the rest. Or you could take all of it, put it all down on paper and sell it as a book and rip me off. That wouldn't be cool. Wouldn't be cool at all. But I don't know why I'm like feeding illegal activity ideas. That was reversed. See, I don't even speak English. If I don't even speak proper English, how am I going to translate my books? Anyway, I find that, okay, so you identified yourself as more of a storyteller and you're having trouble with dialogue and scenes. I find that it is worthwhile to let go of that then. If that's what you're struggling with, let it go. And this is the really hard part, especially if you haven't written much. And you know what? That's kind of BS, because even when you have written a lot, I haven't written a book since The Watcher last year. So I'm going to be rusty when I finally have the time to sit down and write my next book. Because some of you might be going, what? But what about Ophelia? Ophelia was actually written in 2013. And of course I've edited it and updated it so that it's a manuscript that I feel is current. Or rather, a novel that I feel is current. However, I had to write all 4 books before I released the first one, so yes, Ophelia was actually written far before The Watcher, strangely enough. So when I do sit down to write my next book, I know that I'm going to be rusty and that I'm going to have to go through part of this psychological process as well, which is identifying sort of your insecurities and your weaknesses. So Erica, it sounds like one of your weaknesses is dialogue and scenery. That's probably because what you're feeling is the emotion of the story and the beats of the story. You know what needs to happen, you know how people feel, you're being driven by this forward momentum inside of you, and if that's what needs to come out first, let that come out first. The rest, and you have to trust yourself, and this goes back to what I was just starting to say, building trust with anyone can be a time-consuming process. Building trust with yourself and your own skill set is something that unfortunately I worry some people never do. But to be a writer who can write and write and write, and by that I don't mean slave away, I mean that when you do have these wonderful ideas that you're inspired by and you want to try to capture in some form, you need the discipline and you need the confidence to be able to do it. So write and write and write in terms of get this out. Not in terms of like you have to be a slave or you have to be churning these things out or anything like that. Just to get you to the level where you feel like, yeah, that's a book, or that's a short, or that's a painting or a song, or just whatever it is, it needs to come out of me and it needs to come to fruition in some way. So my advice to you, which is going to sound kind of haphazard, is to just keep going. Do it anyway. So what if you don't have the dialogue you need yet? So what if you don't have the descriptions of the scenery that you need yet? Don't let that slow you down right now. Right now you are being driven by the impulse to create. And you need to follow that, because that voice and that spirit inside of you is trying to find an avenue. And you need to give it an avenue to be birthed into the world through the written word. And guess what? You're still in control. So after you write as much as you think you need to write to get to the place where you're at, just a first draft, then you can take a step back and take a breath and go back and start on page 1 and start looking through it. And it won't, sometimes editing or reworking a draft can feel like homework. This, for early stages, for me at least, don't feel like homework, because you're still storytelling, and a lot of people don't know that if they haven't done it yet, because they think, well, I already told the story, this is just embellishing it further. That's still using your storytelling skill set, because what you're going to be doing then is going along and tweaking the dialogue or adding the dialogue and fleshing out where the scene is happening. I think what often happens, and again, this is just from my own experience, is because you're writing from a place of emotion, your character's emotions, the emotion of the story, you don't have time or room or often ability to describe the surroundings right then. to describe what the person's face looks like, to describe their tone of voice. You're just getting it out. And that's why I say to just do it, to just keep going. And just trust yourself, just trust that you will be able to go back and expand where you need to expand and contract where you need to contract. That's all part of the storytelling process. When I wrote Ophelia the first time, in fact, when I wrote all the Afterworld books, it was the same idea of, I didn't struggle with dialogue so much, but there was so much coursing through me that was needed to come out, because as you guys probably know, if you're regular viewers, I tend to write comparatively to other writers very quickly. So I'm writing these books in the course of a month, and they're long books, and they're complicated, and there's a lot of characters, and I don't outline. So it is this form of madness that takes over me, and it needs to come out. So maybe that's why I'm such an advocate of, like, get it out before you go insane. And get it out before it changes shape into something you don't recognize, or manifests in another way, because that story does need to be in the world, and you're the conduit for it. So when I was working on Ophelia, and these books that are so heavily based upon people's relationships, rather than a supernatural outside force, you know, like Darkling, there was so much emotion in every scene that I had to write from that raw place first. And that raw place is not the final version by far. Think about it as acting, because that's how it feels to me. I feel like I am being an actor, and as I'm moving through the scene, I am climbing into the skin of the different characters, and I'm feeling what they're feeling, and I'm trying to capture that, and I'm trying to put that onto the page. And once I have done that, and I have got these broad brush strokes, that's kind of, I guess, my outline for the next draft. And I'll come to that scene again, and I'll be like, that's right, this is what's happening. And that is where in the process you might go, why did that happen there when it happened again later, and the later version is the one that I actually really needed? This one was just kind of some part of me trying out this scene, but I don't need it there, so I'm going to take that out. You know, that's when you're going to find yourself kind of weighing your options and making decisions like that, which is, of course, part of the editing process. But that's also where you can come upon a scene, and a lot of the heavy lifting's been done because the emotional work has been done, which to me, as a writer and storyteller, is the hardest freaking part. I put up a vlog, I'm blanking on the title right now, but it was about kind of self-care when you're working on something heavy. And it you know, and in that one I talk about how sometimes when you're writing about upsetting stuff, it can take a toll on you. So once you've gotten that out, though, and you feel satisfied that you've purged these emotions from you and put them onto the page, once they're emblazoned there, then you do have more room in your head and in your heart and in your soul to have that breathing space and reflect and fill in the weak points. Like my characters would be making kind of token expressions at first because I knew that I would come back later and flesh that out, which sounds silly given that I'm talking about people's faces, but you know. And so I would be doing that, and I would be doing, that is where I'm describing the room and I'm describing their movement, because like I said, you just have more room in your imagination. Once that heavy lifting's done, you can kind of start visualizing the scene more and letting the characters, you relax to let the characters' voices start coming forth more. So again, this is only my experience. However, I think that there is a lot of similar psychology that goes on with creative people in general, especially storytellers and writers. And so I'm hoping a lot of you will be able to relate to the process I just explained, because, and this is where maybe studies are being done, maybe there are papers out there and I'm just not aware of them, but I am fascinated by the psychology behind writing and behind reading. And that process I just explained to you, to me, can be applied to the arts and creative fields all, you know, across the board. But in particular with storytelling, because when you are getting into the nitty-gritty stuff, you are giving a piece of yourself, and that can get exhausting. And so once you do that exhausting portion, that's when I find the rest comes. So Erica, if you're hitting a wall, if you are feeling this drive to tell the story and you're going along and you're realizing, I have no idea what their house looks like. I don't even know what her best friend looks like, or her mom, or her, I don't know. I'm having trouble picturing these people as three-dimensional living, breathing beings. That's fine. Just, like I said, try to get it all out, and the rest will start to develop as you go. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. And I think it's important to talk about these things, and like you said, how you asked, for someone to explain this in depth. I'm probably not going as deep as you could go, but, and this goes back to why I like doing this vlog. It makes me stop and think and articulate in ways that are difficult and ways that I would be resistant to if I were just prompted on my own. That's why I do this as a stream of consciousness vlog, because if I prepare for it, it is going to seem a little canned, and it's not going to be sort of my own journey and my own soul searching involved, which I think it makes it more, I want to say tangible, but I think it makes it more digestible and relatable, because it is like we're just having a conversation. But as a creative person, having gone through the process I just described of trying to get the emotion out and then doing the finer work, that is something that I wouldn't have been able to articulate not too long ago, because I wasn't ever prompted by people like you, Erica, to be like, well, what is it that you're actually doing? And I think as creative people, we are often not asked, in so many words, how did you do that? And we just say, well, I just sat there and I wrote. No, how did you do it? What was the process? So then that means you have to pay attention the next time you do it, or really reflect on what you've been doing and try to figure out what was going on in my head. Because we do go into the right side of our brains where time doesn't exist, and the more logical parts of our mind stop working as well. And when we're in the zone, when we're in that space, we might as well be elsewhere. And it's hard to keep track of things when you're operating in that sphere. And often, once you finish it, you're like, well, I don't know how I got there. I'm just glad I got there. I'm just glad it's done. Look at it. It's great. Like, I'm proud of it. Or maybe it needs work, but like, I still did the thing. Then we're not necessarily... we're learning because we did it and we can do it again. Kind of like riding a bike. But I think it's important that you pause and reflect on, how did I get here? Which is what you're making me do. And I hope then that can help with other people who don't have the time or luxury that I have had in my writing career, for being supported by my family to experiment and to fail and to rise up again and to keep going. Because learning the different psychological portions of this process, learning kind of the pattern, and again, building that confidence in yourself as a writer and a storyteller is really, really key to seeing a project through to fruition. The hardest part is always giving yourself permission to not have it be perfect right now. So as you're writing, Erica, and everyone else watching, just keep reminding yourself that this is how it is right now. It's a work in progress. This is where it is right now. I can do whatever I want with it. I can change it. I can throw it away. I don't have to show this to anyone. It's still taking shape. It's a lump of clay, and I just kind of built the snowman figure, and now I'm going to start finessing that into something that looks more like a human. And it might take you several passes. It might only take you one pass. It might make you realize that you want to start all over again. Whatever it is, it's okay. And we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get it right and to get it right the first time. And I think that comes from the fact that we are used to opening up a book that's at the end of this process and reading it, and we just have that one experience of sitting and reading it, and we don't have to go through this whole shape-shifting learning curve, and we can just enjoy it. And so we tend to have this fallacy of applying the experience of reading to the experience of writing, which you can't do that. And that's something I've kind of been paying more attention to lately, especially when people will say things that are borderline insulting to you, like, oh, how fun it must be to do what you do. It must be so fun. It's like, well, it's fun to read books, but there are certainly parts of writing that aren't fun. There's a lot to being a writer that isn't necessarily fun. Hopefully it's your passion, and that's why you're doing it, and you're enjoying it. and it doesn't feel like you're ripping out your fingernails, but it doesn't mean it's always fun. You know, it's fun to read Harry Potter. I'm sure that J.K. Rowling, there were times that she's like, why did I write these books? Why did I start this? You know, it's just, you just remember it won't always be that way. And that's why I say your project is what it is right now. And it's going to change and evolve and progress. And I'm almost out of battery, so real quick, I hope that helped you guys. As always, you can find me on Patreon and support me. I am going to be signing off with a Birds of Ireland placard, pamphlet thing that I'm going to take with me and have some birding fun, because I actually really like birding. That might not be something you know about me. So for me and my Ireland birds, which seems improper English, I bid you all very fond farewell. Take care.